In early 2025, the Trump administration shocked the global auto industry with sweeping new tariffs on imported vehicles and parts. The announcement sent ripples through boardrooms and factories worldwide, as automakers scrambled to understand the full scope and impact of the new rules. The goal was clear: protect American manufacturing jobs and push automakers to build more cars in the U.S. Supporters argued it would bring back lost jobs and revitalize communities that once thrived on auto production. Tariffs jumped to 15% on vehicles from Japan, South Korea, and the EU, up from just 2.5%. This sudden increase made many popular models significantly more expensive for American buyers. Cars from Canada and Mexico faced a 25% tariff unless they met strict USMCA content rules, adding another layer of complexity for North American automakers. Nearly half of all new vehicles sold in the US are imported, so this policy upended business models overnight. Dealers and consumers alike were left scrambling to adjust to the new reality. Japanese automakers like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, deeply invested in the US market, were hit especially hard. These companies had spent decades building factories and supply chains across North America. Their global supply chains, built for efficiency and cost savings, suddenly became a liability. The tariffs forced them to reconsider sourcing, logistics, and even future investments. The tariffs weren't just on finished cars, they also targeted the thousands of imported parts that go into every vehicle, from transmissions to microchips. Even US-assembled cars often rely on foreign engines, electronics, and batteries. No automaker was immune from the ripple effects of these new trade barriers. The result: a complex, costly puzzle for every automaker, threatening profits and forcing a fundamental rethink of how and where cars are built. Companies face tough choices about raising prices, cutting costs, or shifting production. The administration argued this would revive US factories, but the reality was far more complicated. Some plants saw a boost, while others struggled with higher costs and uncertain demand. The modern auto industry's global web was now tangled in red tape and rising costs, leaving automakers, workers, and consumers to navigate a new and uncertain landscape. The financial fallout was immediate and far-reaching, sending shockwaves through boardrooms and factory floors alike. By mid-2025, global automakers had already lost over $11.7 billion to tariffs, a staggering figure that rattled investors and executives worldwide. Japanese companies, heavily reliant on US exports for their profits, faced a brutal choice: absorb the costs and slash profits, or raise prices and risk losing customers in their most important market. In the hyper-competitive US market, even a small price hike could send buyers elsewhere, forcing dealerships to scramble for new strategies to keep customers interested. One report estimated the industry's total tariff bill would top $25 billion in just 7 months, a sum that threatened to wipe out years of steady growth. For Japanese brands, the tariffs punished the very efficiency and precision that had made them global leaders, undermining decades of careful planning and investment. Every container of parts, every shipload of cars, now carried a heavy new tax, turning routine shipments into costly gambles. The pain was industry-wide, from giants like Toyota, who saw billions at stake, to smaller players like Mazda and Subaru, who struggled to stay afloat. Companies diverted resources from innovation and research just to manage the crisis, putting future advancements on hold. The dream of seamless, borderless manufacturing was replaced by a costly, unpredictable environment, where every shipment and every part became a new risk. Financial reports from Japan told a clear story: disruption, distress, and a scramble to adapt to a world that suddenly felt much less stable. The just-in-time model, once the pride of Japanese manufacturing, was under siege, and the industry's future was suddenly uncertain and fraught with risk. Automakers faced a stark new reality: political decisions could reshape their fortunes overnight, leaving even the most prepared companies vulnerable. The financial storm was only beginning, and for Japanese automakers, the road ahead looked more uncertain than ever before. Toyota, the world's largest automaker, took a staggering $9.5 billion hit to earnings, sending shockwaves through the global auto industry and raising concerns among investors and employees alike. The company was forced to slash its profit forecast by 16%, a move that rattled markets and signaled just how severe the impact of new tariffs and trade tensions had become. In just one quarter, tariffs erased over $3 billion from Toyota's operating income, putting immense pressure on its operations and future planning. Honda, another Japanese giant, saw its profits plunge 50% in a single quarter, with losses topping $1 billion and leaving executives scrambling for solutions. Both companies warned of billions more in potential losses if the trade war dragged on, highlighting the uncertainty that now clouded their outlook. Their vast global manufacturing networks, once a source of efficiency and strength, now became a costly weakness, as tariffs targeted vehicles assembled outside the U.S. Popular SUVs and trucks assembled overseas faced tariffs adding nearly $5,000 per vehicle, making them far less competitive in the crucial American market. To stay competitive, Toyota and Honda absorbed most of the costs themselves, sacrificing profits to avoid losing market share and customer loyalty in a fiercely contested industry. Every tariffed car sold meant less money for research and development in electric and self-driving technology, threatening their ability to innovate and keep pace with global rivals. The tariffs weren't just a tax on today's sales, they threatened the future of Japanese innovation, putting the country's reputation for cutting-edge automotive technology at risk. The scramble to adapt was on, but the financial squeeze was relentless, forcing both companies to make tough decisions about jobs, investments, and future projects. The industry's leaders were forced to rethink everything, from supply chains to product strategy, as they navigated a landscape that seemed to shift by the day. The stakes had never been higher, and the next moves by Toyota and Honda would shape not just their own futures, but the future of the global auto industry itself. The pain didn't stop with Toyota and Honda. Nissan, already struggling, faced even tighter margins and a tougher turnaround. Smaller brands like Subaru and Mazda, lacking deep reserves, warned investors of unpredictable earnings. The just-in-time system, once a model of efficiency, became a liability as parts crossing borders were taxed at every turn. Automakers put new investments on hold, reviewing every component to find US-based suppliers. The tariffs forced a retreat from globalization, pushing Japanese companies toward a more regional, expensive way of doing business. The industry's foundation was shaken, and the path forward was anything but clear. The ripple effects were felt in every boardroom and factory. The tariffs triggered a logistical crisis, unraveling decades of global supply chain strategy. Automakers scrambled to trace the origin of thousands of parts, as even US-built cars could be hit with tariffs if key components were imported. Renegotiating with suppliers and finding new US-based partners was slow, costly, and often impossible in the short term. Trusted relationships built over years couldn't be replaced overnight. Companies rerouted supply lines, delayed new factories, and absorbed huge logistical costs. The once seamless global system became a tangled, expensive mess. The industry's reliance on global integration was now a vulnerability. The dream of a borderless manufacturing world was replaced by a scramble to rebuild behind new trade walls. The manufacturing nightmare was real and ongoing. To survive, automakers pivoted to local production. Building new US plants cost billions and takes years, but the tariffs made it a necessity. GM announced a $4 billion shift of SUV production from Mexico to the US. Honda considered adding shifts at existing American plants to boost output quickly. The push wasn't just for assembly. Parts suppliers were also being localized. Tesla built its first US battery factory to avoid tariffs on Chinese components. The industry's philosophy shifted from global efficiency to resilience and risk management. Building closer to customers became the new rule for survival. In July 2025, a new US-Japan trade deal offered some relief, lowering tariffs on Japanese cars from 25% to 15%. Ironically, this gave Japanese automakers a cost edge over Ford and GM, who still faced high tariffs on exports and strict USMCA rules. Ford's CEO warned that Japanese brands could now undercut US-made models by thousands. Automakers scrambled to adjust pricing and production in a volatile market. For buyers, the result was confusion and rising prices. Ford ran promotions to clear pre-tariff inventory, but these were short-term fixes. By year's end, new car prices were projected to rise 4–8%, topping $50,000 on average. The competitive landscape was shifting fast and not always in America's favor. As 2025 ends, the auto industry faces an uncertain future. The US-Japan deal brought some clarity, but volatility remains the norm. Long-term planning is nearly impossible with shifting trade policies. The just-in-time model has given way to a focus on resilience and regionalization. Higher production costs are now seen as insurance against future trade wars. For consumers, tariffs meant higher prices and shrinking affordability. New car sales forecasts were revised downward as buyers balked at rising costs. The tariffs became a tax on the entire auto ecosystem, not just foreign brands. Japanese automakers accelerated U.S. investments, while Ford and GM re-evaluated their own strategies. The industry must stay nimble, ready for more policy changes and global shocks. The lesson is clear. Adaptability is now the most valuable asset in the auto world. The road ahead is foggy, but those who adjust fastest will survive.